Hello everybody and welcome back, and today I'm doing the final review of the group stages of the Rugby World Cup, which include USA Tonga, Wales Uruguay and Scotland Japan. It's the end of the group stages, means no more rugby on every day, which is a sad thing to know, but we are getting to the business end now with the quarterfinals announced. So let's get into the last review of the group stages. So of course the first game of the day, due to the fact Namibia versus Canada was cancelled due to the typhoon, the first game therefore was USA versus Tonga, and this was a cracking game. I've got to admit, all of the games on this day were cracking. USA Tonga started it off well. These are the games I love to see in the World Cup. Two teams who are relatively close to each other giving it their all, and it's fantastic to watch. And I've got to say, they were both giving it their all. Tonga, they came out victorious in the end over the Americans, but the Americans showed some heart. I do think though, overall, the Tongans deserve this win. I think the Tongans have been a bit unlucky with games in this World Cup. The Argentinian one, too many errors, meaning they couldn't win that one. The France one they could have won if they didn't make such a slow start. They could have produced some shocks, but unfortunately they couldn't, and they did finally get a win in this World Cup, which I think they deserved. They deserved a win in this World Cup, and they got it, and they got it in style. Over the tournament, Tonga's attack has slowly been building and reaching its crescendo, and it was on point against the Americans. Of course, Piatau, who is retiring now from international duty, played an absolute blinder. He was amazing on his last appearance for Tonga, and to play that well in your last appearance, it's got to be brilliant, and he was fantastic. Most of the Tongan team were really good. Their scrum was amazing, kept pushing back the Americans. The defence didn't let them through on multiple occasions. And I don't think they let America into the game, especially in the second half, when they were the much better side. They were the better side in that second half, and they didn't allow them in the game. And that's the big point. And it's fantastic to see, because Tonga have been the unlucky team against the big teams in this World Cup, and they finally got their win. With the US though, I don't think they played badly. I think this was their best game of the tournament as well. They played pretty well. After a poor performance against the Argentines, they came into this one on a 4-day turnaround, and they did alright in the first half. They scored some good tries. Of course, Tio, who came on for a HIA replacement, was amazing throughout the game. He was good. And the Americans were just solid. They were decent. But I think the 4-day turnaround they got after a bruising encounter against the Argentines caused them to fall off, and it allowed Tonga just to take away the win. And the 4-day turnarounds have been a big factor in this World Cup, especially for the teams like USA and other teams like that. The minnow sides, they've really suffered with 4-day turnarounds because they can't get into the game in the second half because they're so tired, because they're giving it everything in the first half and they're giving it everything for the game they played 4 days ago, that in the end they're just going to fall off in the second game of the 4-day turnaround. And I feel like that's what the Americans did. They still played well. They played well in the first half. They finished on somewhat a high. Of course, they didn't get a win, which is sad for the Americans, but I think this was definitely their best performance in the World Cup. And yeah, they can go home not relatively happy because they didn't win a game, but they can go home with heads held high because they did end on a high. With Tonga, they'll be happy they got that win, because really they should have beaten the French and they could have got closer to Argentina. So they were so close to a shock that they really, if they wouldn't have won this game, they would have gone home bitterly disappointed. But they won it. They bid farewell to Sione Piatau, who had a fantastic performance, of course, man of the match. And yeah, Tonga won it, and they go home with a win, and they will be pretty happy with their performances in this World Cup. So the second game of the final day was Wales versus Uruguay. And this one, well, it wasn't the most exciting of games, we'll put it that way, but Uruguay, well, they've been brilliant throughout this tournament, and they continued to be brilliant. They stopped Wales for most of that first half. They only allowed them one try, and they were just brilliant in that first half. They were just halting Wales. And yeah, the Welsh attack isn't brilliant, but they were in the game. They were 1 point down at half time. It was 7-6. And the Uruguayans have really, really overperformed in this World Cup, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant because when you have the opportunity to play against a Tier 1 side, you have to take it. And that's what Uruguay have done. They did it against Australia. They pushed them close. And then they pushed Wales close here as well. And, well, the first half, it was all Wales. The first half was all Wales, but they couldn't finish anything off. They were dropping balls left, right and centre. And it wasn't a brilliant display from them at all. They were very sloppy. They couldn't find a way through the Uruguayan defence. And when they did, as I said, they dropped the ball. And this is credit to the Uruguayan pressure. They were putting pressure on the Welsh ball, they were putting pressure on the Welsh forwards, just forcing them to make passes they don't want to make when they could have easily just scored tries and not having to make the pass. But Uruguay put Wales under a whole load of pressure, and it really paid off, because when Uruguay got the ball, they went down to their area. They didn't have much of an attacking threat, but they got penalties and they kicked them over, and therefore they were only a point behind, which, to Uruguay's credit, is a brilliant thing, because to be 1 point behind against a Tier 1 nation such as Wales, who are on such good form, it's amazing for them. The second half though, yeah, they tired off near the end. Wales ended up getting the bonus point. They started to run away with it a bit. But I do think they were still there or thereabouts in the second half. Of course, they scored a try of their own, which is good. You always want to see them score a try of their own. And now I think that they've scored a try in every game in this World Cup, which they didn't do in 2015. So that is a bonus for them. They've scored in every game in this World Cup. That's got to give credit to them. Got to give credit to their grit and determination to score tries. But yeah, they only got that try in the second half because Wales just pulled away. The Uruguayans, of course, their fitness isn't going to be great, and then due to that, the Welsh just pushed on. They pushed on. And they ended up getting the win, and I can't say they deserved it, but it's credit. They got themselves out of a sticky situation and they pulled away in the end. And if they didn't beat Uruguay, there would have been some talking in the press about how good this Welsh team really is, but they managed to pull themselves out of a dodgy situation which they didn't want to be in. They got given more of a game than they really probably wanted to be given, and yeah, they managed to pull away in the end. But, as I said, Uruguay will go home very, very, very happy, because I believe that they have been the best minnow side in this World Cup. They've been brilliant. They've scored a try in every game. They've pushed every team that they've played close, especially in first halves. Of course, they got that upset against Fiji, and they've just been amazing. They've been brilliant, and they've got to go home really happy, because they couldn't have asked for much better from their team. They couldn't have. With Wales, they move on to the quarterfinals now. They play France in the quarterfinals. Wales, of course, they changed a lot of their team for this game. They'll probably go back to what they had for the first three games, and that team has been playing well. So I don't know whether they'll struggle against France. The team that played in the last three games have pretty much near enough had a 2-week break going into the France game, and so have France. So it's going to be a very close game. I think it'll be hard to call because of France's unpredictability, but I think Wales have enough in the locker to get past France. But who knows, if their main team plays like what some of their players did on against Uruguay, then who knows, but it is a completely different side, so it's hard to take anything from this game. But yeah, Wales ended up winning and they head into the quarterfinals. Happy with 4 wins from 4. The final game of the day was probably the best game of the whole group stages. Scotland versus Japan in what was a must-win for both teams. And how good was this one? So happy that the game went ahead, and well, we were treated to something spectacular. If you were a Scottish fan, it was excruciating. If you're a Japanese fan, it was unbelievable. If you're a neutral, it was brilliant. It was just a game for everyone. And well, I don't really know how to describe it. There's not really many ways to describe how good that game was, because it was fantastic. Started off, of course, Scotland came out of the blocks very, very quickly. They started really well. Scored that early try through Finn Russell, jinxing through the defence. It was all looking good. It was all looking very good for the Scots. But I think that the Japanese have actually started slowly in all of their games so far. They've actually taken a while to get up to speed, and they have conceded, I think they've conceded the first points in every game. I might be wrong about that, but I think they have, and they've started very slowly in most of them. Of course, they conceded the early try to Russia. They did against Ireland, they did against Scotland here as well. And they started slowly, and Scotland, of course, took advantage of that. They scored the early try. But once Japan got into their flow, got ball in hand, well, they were something else. They were all over Scotland, quick ball, straight out, and the way they play is fascinating. How they can keep the pace of the game to be so high throughout the whole 80 minutes is fascinating. Their fitness levels have gone through the roof since the last World Cup and other World Cups before that, because they're non-stop. They're just non-stop quick rugby, and it's brilliant to watch. They scored 3 tries in that first half, and they were all amazing. Some of them, yeah, from Scottish errors, let's admit it. Scotland made some errors to give Japan easy scores, but they weren't really easy scores. They were very good scores, but very technical. Like Fukuoka's 2 tries, they were very technical, you know. And Japan just play beautiful rugby. They just do chips over the top, got quick players running onto the ball, slick hands, quick out, straight into the try line. You know, it's almost unstoppable at times, and it felt like that no defence can actually stop this Japanese side. Yes, the Scottish defence isn't amazing in the first place, but their rucking is really good for Scotland. Their back 3 in the forwards pack are amazing, so they've got good players there who can try and slow the ball down, but they couldn't even slow the ball down. Japan were just, as soon as the ball was available out of the ruck, they didn't just stand there and wait, they shipped the ball straight out, and it puts the defence under pressure because they've got a set. And the counter-attack from turnovers, which Japan got a lot of, because their forwards aren't bad, they're really good in the rucks, their forwards. They could get the turnovers, get quick ball, and they're straight away going off on a brilliant attack, and Scotland just couldn't handle it. I feel like they struggled with it in that first half, struggled to keep up with the pace that the Japanese were playing at, and that's what put the Japanese so far ahead. Of course, they went in half-time 21-7 ahead. Scotland's hopes looked very bad, but then there was a change in the second half. The Scots, I think, they realised what they had to do. They had to keep the ball, and they kept the ball, and they started playing some decent rugby themselves. And I think the Japanese were almost shocked at what happened in the second half, the revival the Scottish had. Of course, the Japanese scored their try first, pretty much straight from kick-off. They scored straight away, brilliant stuff, and then the Scots just came straight back into it, and it was looking like the Scots could pull off another good comeback, just like the one against England in the Six Nations, because they started playing good rugby. They were keeping the ball, they were playing well, they were passing well, they were building attacks, and they scored 2 decent tries in quick succession. I think it was in a 7-minute time frame they scored 2 tries, and the Japanese looked shaky. They looked like they were tiring, and I think they were. I think the Japanese were tiring. I think it's the first time in this tournament we've seen them tire a little bit, and that's what brought the Scots back into the game. They just forced the Japanese to make tackles and push them back, and they did that. But once the Scots got that 3rd try, it turned into a bit of a stalemate after that, because I think the Japanese knew they were tiring out, and then they started to play more of a forwards game, started to work harder in the forwards, trying to keep the Scots in one position, defending more, slowing the ball down, and it just became a dogfight. The Japanese knew the Scots were coming at them, they were attacking them, and they were looking good. So what they had to do is they had to make it a dogfight. And, well, we all know Japanese have really good backs, but my word, their forwards are good as well. Michael Leach, Labuschagne, they were brilliant to slow the ball down in the ruck, not allowing the Scots any quick ball. And in the end, the Japanese really, really deserved this. Even if they did lose and they got knocked out, that would have been so undeserved if they would have lost and got knocked out, because the Japanese, for me, really deserved to get into these quarters, because they played brilliant in every single game. And that first half against the Scots for the Japanese, for me, really showed why they deserved to get into the quarters. They were fantastic, and well, I wouldn't be surprised if they pull off another shock in the quarterfinals, because they've been amazing in this tournament. The fans have been brilliant as well, and it's basically like having a 16th men for the Japanese. They're just cheering them on non-stop, and it's so helpful. And it's almost as if the other teams can't handle playing against them because of the crowd, because of their speed of play. Yeah, for me, the Japanese just fully deserve this, and I'm glad they're into the quarterfinals, because I couldn't think of a team more deserving of a quarterfinal spot in this World Cup than Japan. They have been amazing. For Scotland, I don't think they played badly. The first half wasn't great. The second half they showed fight, but in the end they just couldn't get to grips with the Japanese speed in the first half. And yeah, I think that game against Ireland, that first game, really, really punished them, because it put them on the back foot. It meant this was a must-win, and yeah, they were there, but they couldn't handle the pace of the Japanese. And I think it's a bit harsh saying that they don't deserve the quarterfinals, because they haven't played badly. I think they were all right. I think it's that first game against Ireland which really set them back, and the first half against Japan here really set them back as well. It gave them so much work to do, and it was borderline impossible with the way Japan were playing. So in the end, Scotland 3rd in the group, but yeah, that first game against Ireland really punished them. For Japan though, they're through to the quarterfinals. They play South Africa, and could we see another upset in the quarterfinals? Could we see Japan making the semis? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. So they are my reviews for the final games of the group stages. I will be doing reviews of the quarterfinals separately, so one game each. They'll be separate. And also in the coming weeks or days, I will be uploading videos on the top 20 teams in the World Cup group stages. So I'll be ranking every team based on their performances and how well they played from 20 to top. So I'll be uploading that in the coming days and weeks. And the Premiership predictions will also be coming soon as well in the coming days. So yeah. Thank you all for watching. Please like and subscribe. Put in the comments down below what your favourite moment of the World Cup group stages were, and I'll see you in a bit.